Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pink Table Talk. My name is Loria Reed, and I'm your host today. And we have some great topics here on the Pink Table Talk, and today is no different. We've got two women that I love and that I believe that you are going to enjoy. So make sure that you go ahead on and begin texting your girlfriends. Let them know that we're on. Share this, like this. Let us know where you're watching from as well. And shoot us some comments as we're talking to go along with this conversation. Today, we are talking about women in ministry. And I'm so grateful to be a part of a church family who loves women and loves women in ministry. And today we've got two of our executive pastors who so happen to be women with me today. So I'm going to go ahead on and introduce them. But like I said, go ahead on and share and like this. Our first guest is a native of one of my favorite cities, Miami, Florida. She has been a resident of the Atlanta area for over 12 years. She has had a 25-year career long running management and local government in the Miami area. And she took an early leave to come on up to the Atlanta area. In addition to her job, you guys, she was a co-founder alongside her husband, the late Pastor Michael Mitchell, in a prominent non-denominational church. So she's like our shero, right? So she did all of that, and she came on to Atlanta and came on as our executive pastor, has three beautiful, vivacious daughters, one of who has been on the Pink Table Talk, Melissa, Monique, and Melanie. And we're so happy to have her. Would you all please welcome Dr. Sharon Mitchell?
Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be a part of today's Pink Table Talk. I'm excited about the subject, and I adore your host. Glad to meet everyone.
So glad you're with us today. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for being with us. And our second guest, she's second to none. She was born in Macon, Georgia, Mactown born in 1983 to Pastor and Mrs. J.W. Carner, and served in ministry there for several years. And under her father's leadership, she was licensed to preach in August of 2000 at the Holly Grove Baptist Church. Under continued watch and God continued to order her footsteps and chart out her path, she grew for her love of ministry, theology, and authentic transformation of communities and the people of God. We're happy to have her with us. She has served also at Bible-Based Fellowship Church in Tampa, Florida, Mississippi Boulevard Church in Memphis. And of course, she's back at the House of Hope Atlanta, has been here for a couple of years now, where she currently serves as our additional executive pastor. So would you all please welcome Pastor Jennifer Carner.
Hey family, listen, I absolutely love your host. Loria Reed is one of my favorite people in the whole world. So I'm just excited to be with y'all tonight.
I'm excited to have you with me. I got my two execs with me. So glad to have y'all. Okay, well, we're going to get into it. So we're talking about women in ministry, and I'm sure that you all have stories galore of what things you've encountered, things you've gone through, things you've seen. So my question to you to start out with is, can you just talk about how you're into ministry, and was there like a fear, like a small fear associated with being a woman or a female in ministry? And I'll start first with whichever one of you guys feels the need. Who would that be?
Pastor Carney is giving me that eye like it's going to be you, Dr. Mitchell. So okay. I'll start. As you reflect, Loria, I actually co-founded the church with my husband in 1984. But I did not become ordained until 1998. And some of that, so some of that was just understanding the importance and the call itself. Are you ready? Do you hear the call? Are you going to accept? And going through all of that component, my call in terms of accepting a call was more to do with the responsibility to the call than being a woman in a call. And I think it's because having had my husband as my first pastor, and having ordained me as part of my ordination committee, I did not have the fear of my womanness in terms of being called to ministry, because I felt I was in a safe place with my pastor. So mine more was, I felt, was the awesomeness that goes along with your accepting a call and all that is required of you when you accept a call. So that was my journey in terms of getting into ministry, in terms of the official capacity. And as you know, as women, we always served in ministry in all kinds of capacities without the title or the pay. But we certainly are in servanthood from the time we enter into any place for the most part. And so that was my story for a number of years. I understood what service meant, whether it was in a professional career or if it was actually in the church.
My story was totally different. When I told my dad that I was called to preach at the age of 9, because it was missionary Baptist, as you said, Holly Grove Baptist Church, no female ministers at all. He said, "No, you're not." And I said, "What do you mean I'm not called?" He said, "No, you're going to get married, be a doctor. You got another path." And so after he saw that I was not backing down, that I was reading all the commentaries, and of course, my mother, who was a Sunday school teacher at the time, she said, "I'm going to work with you." And she taught me basic exegesis. Even much so at our church, everybody was like, the average age was 60. She put me up to teach Sunday school. And thus began the journey. And so once my dad realized I was not backing down, he said, "Wait a minute, I think you are called to preach." And so he allowed me to do my initial sermon, and everything just took off from there.
Wow. So even talking with that, with the acceptance, like you talked about coming from a missionary Baptist church, how was that? Have you felt like you've had to defend yourself, or has there ever been a time when you felt you did not defend yourself properly, where you kind of got a little too emotional, snapped on somebody at the wrong time, or you just didn't say anything? So I don't know how you vary in personality, but did you feel at any point, I don't want to say inferior because I don't believe that was it, but just where you had to defend yourself? And I'll start with you, Pastor Carner.
So for me, that part of my journey is, I think, authentic to my journey, because I do hear my female friends who are pastors talk about having to defend the call. I really never had to do that. I would go to church, they would have me on the floor. Come on now. They wouldn't let you preach in the pulpit, but they made me from the floor. But when they saw that I was bringing a solid word, and they saw that my heart posture was for God, it was kind of like, we can't hold her back. We can't deny the call. So I think for me and my journey, I've just been authentic to what God has called me to do and the preaching style that God has given me. And that has opened doors and opened people's eyes to seeing that the word can come from anybody, regardless of their gender.
That's awesome. And I believe that Pastor, when we had our leadership conference with Dr. Joel Gregory, he said, like I tell all the women, you preach the word just the way I'm teaching you how to preach. In so many words, like don't let that be something where it's like, he said, you teach and preach the word the way God has called you, and go in there and do what you're supposed to do. And that was his answer. And I thought that was awesome. So Dr. Mitchell, my question for you, have you ever had to defend yourself or been in a position where someone made you to make you feel like you weren't who you were to God in ministry?
My journey is very similar to Pastor Carner's. I've not felt the sense of defending because I'm old school where you just be. And so that's people see you're just being. And so for me, with my just being, when you have proper preparation, when you have the heart to serve and you have the Holy Spirit, people somehow can feel all of that. I have had the occasions where I've been offered the pews versus the pulpit. I've been given coaching prior to entering certain circles in terms of attire. Make sure that you're not offensive, and certainly we want to follow scripture where we don't go into somebody's house and offend them. So I've ensured that I've had the proper kinds of things so that nothing that is about me physically will make someone else stumble. So I've not had the outright having the to defend the faith, if you will, in terms of being a woman and being a woman preacher or a woman who's in ministry and in authority. I think the real key is oftentimes you will be received by way of delivering the word, but that does not necessarily people will receive you in terms of being in a role of authority. And I think that's a little bit different for women who in any role of authority. And I fortunately had both a career where I was in authority and then, of course, entering into the church and authority. So I was accustomed to what some of those pitfalls were and what to look out for as it relates to your authority in terms of your role being challenged. And I had created a process in terms of understanding how to navigate through those components. So more so in terms of my role and my authority that was assigned to the role has been my biggest issue in terms of the component, but not so much as being a woman, but being a woman who is in authority.
So what would you say, or what advice would you give to a woman who may feel rejected? And it may not just necessarily be in ministry, but in whatever field they may be in, because a lot of fields of leadership are dominated by men. So what advice would you give to a woman who's kind of struggling right now with, I'm the only woman, I'm the only Black female I see when I go in my position. It's nothing but men here, and I'm rejected in a lot of areas. What advice would you give to them? And I'll start with you, Pastor Carmen. Go ahead.
Dr. Mitchell has done an excellent job in really singling out the key issue, which is authority. So I want to start out by answering the question by calling out the elephant in the room, right? The Black female body is contested space. When we look at the death of Breonna Taylor and the whole Say Her Name movement, the idea that we as Black women are probably one of the most marginalized groups, it plays a factor in how we are seen in leadership. So I want to say to a woman who may be watching who's endured ministry rejection, that experience of rejection does not have to end your ministry. God has a calling on your life. And I think one of the greatest gifts that I can give to you is to say, get a tribe, get some mentors, get some prayer partners, get some spiritual mothers, and even some spiritual fathers around you who can affirm you, who can encourage you in those moments, because there are going to be times when you're going to go to a place just as Jesus did, and they not receive you. But that doesn't mean that God's endorsement is not on your life and your ministry. So listen, as long as you have the endorsement that counts, and that is the hand of God, then don't worry or don't internalize those moments of rejection that you experience in ministry assignments. Keep on moving.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. I love that. Dr. Mitchell, what about you? What advice would you give for someone rejected?
So my advice would be similar, but I certainly start off with the call. First of all, in fact, our pastor's been teaching about Jeremiah in terms of purpose. And certainly we know that one tells us that before he formed us in our mother's womb, he knew us. So he knew we were going to be a woman. He knew we were going to be preachers. He knew all of that before that occurred. So he's equipped us. There's something in us that he already put in us that will be able to address all those issues. So that's the first piece, is understanding your purpose. Then secondly, I would say you have to understand the call. Make your call and election sure. Second Peter tells us about making our calling and election sure. When you know that God has called you, you don't have to be concerned about what man has to say about that. There should be some line with what that call looks like. And so I would certainly say that you need to understand what the call is on your life. And when you understand the call, you will operate appropriately in that call. I too would say that you have to remain faithful. And faith goes from journey to journey oftentimes, and you can build upon your faith. And one of the greatest ways to do that is to have a community of faith. You have to have people. I have mentors. I have sister preachers. I have people who not only are encouragers, but they also ensure that I'm accountable, that there's some accountability. I have people that I can share with, because believe it or not, oftentimes if you're experiencing rejection, some other woman who's in ministry is also experiencing rejection. So you're not alone in this, but you have to be able to have a safe community where you can talk to others who may have a very similar journey. So I say you've got to first understand your purpose, understand the call, have a community of faith, and be faithful. And then finally, I say, know who you are, know your own voice, your own style, and have your own swagger. You be your authentic self. When God created you, there's an audience that only will receive the word from you. So you don't have to emulate anybody else. You don't have to take anybody else's style. There's something special just about you. So be your authentic self. And rejection has a way of removing itself, because oftentimes we're rejected because people are not receiving who we are, or they're not receiving what we have to offer. But when you know that that's who God made you, I shared a story about my oldest daughter. Most people know her. She's real flashy. From early on, she had bright colors. They used to call it light bright. And I used to tell her from a little, hey, there's a place in the earth for you. Be who you are. You're different. And now she's been able to monetize being the light bright little girl who now is a light bright young woman who the world is saying, hey, we want you on our stage. We want you in our space. So be your own authentic self, have your own sense of style, and there will be a group that will be drawn to just that because it's what you have to offer. And nobody else can beat you being you. So when you're you, there's no competition. So that's what I would offer. Be encouraged. This is an encouraging time for women in ministry. It's an encouraging time for women in any role. We've got a vice president that looks just like us. And so that in itself, if we have no other evidence, we have someone high up who looks just like us, who burst the glass ceiling, and now we have somebody that we can be proud of. And so there's a space for all of us to do the same thing. So that's what I would offer to a woman feeling some sense of rejection or feeling out of place in ministry.
Thank you for that. My next question, look, we're going to get a little personal now. One of my questions, we know that you all sales. So what is one of your favorite beauty products that you hoard, something that you love, you just can't do without? Pastor Carner?
Listen, I'm big on vegan cosmetics. I am not fully vegan. I'm vegetarian, and I also eat some seafood. So Lush is my spot in Perimeter. I go to Lush and I purchase the bath bombs. The peach one is my favorite.
Okay.
But I do at least one bath bomb a week just to kind of relax. We didn't mention it earlier, but I am in my second year of PhD work in a program that focuses on Black preaching and sacred rhetoric. And y'all, there are moments when I'm trying to figure out what day of the week is it. Lush Cosmetics is my go-to for that relaxation that we all need to balance everything else.
Yes, yes. I love it. Dr. Mitchell, what about you?
So since I'm a more seasoned young woman, I typically am involved. Yeah, so I'm into true skincare. I like anything moisturizers, cleaning products. I'm in the posture now where I want to make sure that the skin is not sagging as much. So I do a number of things. So I've got a number of items that I use in terms of just maintaining a good skincare regimen. And of course, that means some of the things that I have to do internally as well, biotin and some of those things for hair, and vitamin D and vitamin C, trying to maintain the hair and the nails. But I have quite a few products for moisturizing and cleaning my skin, trying to have a pure skin because a lot of makeup. So if you don't wear a lot of makeup, you got to have the canvas that looks a little clean. So I spend quite a bit of time on those types of items. And I like all kind of smell good stuff also. I spend a lot of money on smell goods, body sprays and creams and perfumes. I just love to smell good. So that's my other obsession in terms of feminine products.
Yes, I love it. And what are your so what are some pet peeves of yours? Let's ask you this. Just you don't have to give me all of them. One or two pet peeves that you may have, ministry pet peeves that we do that aggravate y'all.
Oh my. I got a few of them.
Go ahead, Dr. Mitchell. She's ready.
I'm ready. So a pet peeve for me is when people do not acknowledge you in terms of who you are. What we find, I see this mostly with the men in ministry, where they like to call us sis instead of Pastor Carner or hey sis, how you doing? And so it's like, well, wait a minute, you're not calling Reverend over here bruh, but you calling me sis. So that's a pet peeve of mine. It's just the lack of it's almost like a lack of respect for your role in terms of, that's why I talk about the authority piece and you're operating in the role that you have. Another one for me that's similar is we see what we call mansplaining. And I'm sure you've heard this on some of your other shows, Laria, with some of the other women, where for women, we can say something and a man will come behind and try to interpret and translate what we just said. So we call that mansplaining. So I don't typically, because we're often in an environment where we're mostly men have a tendency when women are in the midst to try to take what they said and say, oh, this is what Dr. Mitchell is saying. I'm like, well, I don't need you to interpret for me. So that's so mansplaining is a bit of a pet peeve for me, as well as the lack of the title in terms of how we interact with one another, particularly when we're in a professional setting, if you will. We often hear with us in terms of, instead of respecting the role that we're in.
Yeah, I get it completely. That's why, because I always call you Doc. I'm like, Doc. I gotta make sure.
You know, yeah. And, there's a time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We're in a setting where we're sort of, everybody's sort of relaxed, but I find that often it's a little more subtle. There's some other subtleties that go into it when men do it with us women. Like our male counterparts. It's a little more read into it when we experience, particularly from men. So that's a pet peeve for me.
Yes, I get it. Okay, Pastor Carner. We'll be soon, Dr. Carner. I'll be calling her Doc.
Yes. Yes.
4 years, sit your prayers, okay? I did not find, as Dr. Mitchell did, through the lens of gender. I have something on my IG called the top 10 mistakes that church staffs make and that churches make. And so I'm gonna share 2 of those as my pet peeves. One of them is what I call popcorn planning, which is when you come up with an idea and because it's a good idea, you decide to implement it. That's a pet peeve for me, because I feel like if you want it to be successful, any good idea needs incubation time. So I have a pet peeve with people who come up with stuff and say, oh, let's do it, without looking at your demographics, without looking at your feasibility. So popcorn planning is one. And then the second one has to do with unhealthy comparisons. How sometimes when we work on teams, and this is secular as well as in religious work, we see what another church is doing or an organization is doing and say, we can do that. You're not even in the same city that they're in. You don't even have the same human capital that they have, or the same body from your congregation. And so that's a pet peeve for me when we think just because someone else is doing it, especially in this season of oversaturation of social media. Come on. We think because someone else is doing it, we can do it without performing the proper feasibility and research. So those are 2 of the pet peeves that transcend even my gender, but it gets on my nerves.
I can believe it. Because I understand it completely. But, what advice in closing would you give to a woman now? And this could be a woman in ministry. This could be a woman in any aspect of anything that just may be watching. Any advice that you would give as a female to another female, or anything that you've learned over the years that you'd just like to share with a woman? And I'll start with you, Dr. Mitchell.
Okay. I think I start with just who a woman is. When God made us, it was something special. When we show up on the scene, it's no longer the same. We take a house, we make it a home. So women in themselves are just such a dynamic creature in the way that God created us. And my posture would be for any woman to stay true to her womanhood. Stay true to who God showed you are. And that means that you've got to be able to believe it first yourself, that there is something special about you, that God put you in the earth for something specific and a specific purpose. And once you believe that, you don't have to be concerned about what others are doing. You don't have to be in competition with anybody. You don't have to be concerned about what they're doing across town versus what you're doing. And God will put you in the right places. He'll make the right connections for you. As I said before, this is an absolutely exciting time to be a woman. And it is a particularly exciting time to be a Black woman. Yes. And so we are to be celebrated. We have been recognized. My heroes are the Stacey Abrams of the world, where they're getting their due credit. They're getting their due recognition. And so this is the time of the woman, I see, as a Black woman. So I say we rise up, get off the bench. If you've been sitting on the bench, if you've been holding back, give it all you got. This is the time. And if nothing else we learn from 2020, tomorrow is not promised to everybody. And so the time is now. Whatever God's giving you, do it now. Whatever vision he's giving you, do it now. If it's a business, if it's a partnership, if it's a relationship, Go for it right now, because this is the time. Seize the opportunity. Carpe diem right now. This is the time to seize the moment. So that's what I would share with women.
I want to encourage the Black female preachers who are watching. You stand on the shoulders of Joanne Lee. You stand on the shoulders of Zilpah Elah. You stand on the shoulders of old Elizabeth, who was a slave preacher who would risk her life to go down to the South to preach the gospel. So you stand on the shoulders of these dynamic women. Therefore, you are enough for this call. You are enough for the assignment that God has given you. But then, second, I want to encourage those of us that have dealt with ministry trauma, as I have. You got to make sure that you take care of your mental health, that you put some systems in place where after you've ministered, after you've preached revivals, after you've led a conference, after you've administrated, you need moments to be refilled, restored, and to be affirmed. So make sure that you have a proper mental health plan in place. You need a pastor, y'all hear me say it all the time, and a therapist. And I believe that will help you on your journey. You are enough. But then also, sis, take care of you. Guard your mental health and also pay attention to your body. Eat right. Come on. Get 8 hours of sleep. All of that helps you to become and walk into the best version of yourself.
Amen. Amen. That's awesome. Y'all did good today. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate that, both of you. I'm so grateful that you come on today. You all have been a blessing to us at our church family, as well as to those who are watching. I know Dr. Mitchell's got Forever Young. That's the show that she has on Hope TV, and also with Pastor Garner. So make sure you check out their shows as well. And I'm so glad that y'all came to the Pink Table Talk to have a little pink discussion today. Light your life, put a little sparkle in life for today. So thank you all so much for watching. We have Dr. Sharon Mitchell and Pastor Jennifer Garner. Please, you see their information below. Make sure you hit them up and follow them on social media. And we will be back next week with another great Pink Table Talk right here on Hope TV. Have a good one. Love y'all.